Welcome to NFL Daily, where the real March Madness is the Fox football robot still getting work after 25 years.
It's doing it.
We're not done with that, guys?
No. It's robotics is the future, and just like it was in 1997 or whatever.
What a bit. I'm Gregg Rosnethal. I'm in the Chris Wrestling Podcast studio with Patrick Claybon. I could have said the real March Madness is Claybon wearing an NFL Network polo outside of training camp. I like it, though.
Yeah.
Representing.
Any grief that I get for the shorts instantly goes away when I put the polo on. Like, nobody questions the shorts when the polo appears, and that's why I love the polo.
Patrick famously wears shorts more to the NFL Network offices than anyone else in the entire building. He is the least diva of all the talent at the network, except for this one thing. And this one thing, this is where he shows.
This puts me in that category.
No, you're not, but it's just like, hey, I can pull this off. Jim in accounting can't.
Jim in accounting, I encourage Jim in accounting to wear shorts.
Well, he's not working that leg day either. That's part of the pretty privilege, as Mina Kimes would call it during the draft season.
I am a skinny guy, Greg. Every inch on these calves was earned.
Okay. Look, this is a different sort of show here. We're starting the week, and we're really starting to look forward to the draft in a more meaningful way. Doesn't mean every show moving forward until the draft is draft related, but I'm honest about where I'm coming from. I've been studying the draft, but now it's time to really cram. It's really time to go into overboard. We're doing 40s and free agents with Daniel Jeremiah every week. He's obviously helping me out. We talked to Adam West last week. That was fun. But I wanted to kind of set up this unofficial start of draft season here on NFL Daily by really just asking the big questions that I want answered over the next month and into the draft. So I'm recognizing that our listeners have a wide base here in terms of knowledge. Some, they could break down like the top 10 defensive tackles in this class. They already know it. Some are closer to me, or they're behind me, or they're casual fans that they just want to start learning about the draft. They don't know everything. So I'm thinking kind of big picture just to kind of kick off a conversation, and who else but Patrick Claybon to really have like a big picture view of it. We're just going to ask some questions that we want answered. We don't have all the answers, but just kind of taking a higher look at it. We're opening the kimono. I don't know what we're doing.
Yeah, the kimono, the swim lanes, all of the corporate jargon that we can cram. It's all applicable here. And unlike some other vehicles, we will define what they all mean.
Okay, I'll kick us off. Why not?
Yeah.
And this is again a show I'm kind of thinking about for the fan who doesn't know the total picture of this class. And I think one thing to know about it that I've learned at least enough is that the profile of it, it's very deep. Mm-hmm. It's great at some odd positions that aren't usually as valued. Running back, tight end, guard. And I think the conventional wisdom is after the first couple of picks, really, and there's only a couple quarterbacks everyone knows, Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, that the difference between pick 5 and 20 might not be that great. Hell, the pick between pick 10 and pick 70 might not be as great as it is in normal class. And I guess my question here is, like, what impact does that have on the draft overall in terms of trade, in terms of mock drafters not knowing what the hell is going to happen, in terms of everything that we get into in the next month or so?
I think it makes it more fun, and I think it makes people show more allegiance to the value of the pick than the player. The teams that have the advantage to me in this draft are the ones that have already made the decision about this is the player I value, this is the position that I would like him to play. And anybody that's just working off of, well, we need to amass picks, it's better to have 3 third-round picks than this particular pick, they're going to be at a little bit of a disadvantage, because the reason that these teams like the player that they have evaluated in that position is because they've done the work. I don't know that every team is doing the same amount of work, and that's why the results are consistent. Some teams are continuing to be bad, and some teams are continuing to be good.
Well, and one of the teams, for instance, that have drafted stupendously over the last few years is the Detroit Lions, and they've gotten a lot of pushback on draft day because they view the board differently than everyone else. And I think more teams, to your point, will be like them this year, where they're not going to worry about position value. Like, they're just going to worry about the player, because the sense that you get, and it's very hard to know ahead of time, but I got to admit, if you look back on some draft classes, some of the ones that didn't hit with top-end talent were the ones that people thought didn't have top-end talent. And what I'm taking away from that is that teams are just going to take their guy, and it's not a great class to have the number 7 pick or the number 10 pick. That I really do think there is something that some of these positions, let's say edge, are getting pushed up a little artificially, where if those guys were in the last couple of classes, they wouldn't necessarily be viewed as potential top 10, top 15 picks. But it's just going to be dealer's choice. It's going to make it harder for the graders, harder for the mock drafters. I think it makes it more fun because we still have plenty of names that we like. It's just unpredictable, and there's not consensus. And who wants consensus?
Nobody.
In life. This is good. This exercise is good for me because I don't know if you're like me, Patrick. I think best out loud. You know what I mean? That's how I talk through things to actually learn.
Literally have conversations with myself out loud. Not just because it's just the way that it happens.
Right.
It works out.
Other people, they have to think it through and then they talk. No, I don't do that.
Not us.
All right, give me a question.
Okay, it's along a similar idea to yours, and I think it adds a lot of randomness because so much of this draft is not just evaluating the decision that you want to make, it's evaluating the decision that you want other people to make. What impact do you think it will be that arguably one of the top, I'll say the best player in this draft, the top 3 players in this draft, teams don't even know what position other teams want to play him at?
Okay, so those 3 would be Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, and who's the third?
However you want to mix it. I just wanted to be
anyone.
Just wanted to
like
be
Jalen
honest.
Walker potentially.
Yeah, I think Travis Hunter is the best football player in this draft, and
yeah,
I feel like a lot of people do, but they don't necessarily agree on what to do with him. And I think when you're evaluating how other people are going to pick or make that decision or perhaps trade, it puts you in a situation where you don't know because it's hard enough to know what they're going to do anyway.
Yeah. Jeremiah had Hunter falling to the Patriots at 4 in his latest mock, and there's logic behind why that would happen. 2 quarterbacks go ahead of him, and Abdul Carter is seen as just clearly the best edge, clearly the best defensive player, pass rusher in this class. And yet, from the outside looking in, Travis Hunter, of course, at Colorado, plays a full complement of snaps on both sides of the ball.
It's insane.
At wide receiver and cornerback. It is not a good cornerback class. He is the best cornerback in this class, maybe by a lot. Will Johnson's got his fans out there. Jahdae Barron has his fans. But certainly Hunter is number 1. Then at wide receiver, he's clearly number 1 at the wide receiver. And I just wonder, is it going to be team dependent what they see him as? Because if I'm Travis Hunter, I just saw Jamar Chase on his extension get like 40 in new money per year. And yet I saw the Texans cornerback Stingley get about 30 in new money and 23 in real money. It's funny, wide receivers actually get more money, which would tell me teams value wide receivers a little bit more. Maybe they're a little more stable than cornerbacks. So I don't think it's crazy at all that teams will see him as a wide receiver.
Ultimately, Travis has representation and they're going to, subsume 3% of his career earnings. It's up to them to determine a new pay structure, perhaps per snap,
right,
of some sort of way, because the traditional means won't do him service as a player who plays both sides of the ball.
Depending on how much he plays both sides of the ball, I just think Travis Hunter as a story has randomly been undersold.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone knows Travis Hunter. He's a Heisman Trophy winner. He's getting a lot of attention in this draft, certainly, but maybe not even as much as Shedeur Sanders. I've covered the NFL for 20 years. There's never been a player like him. There's never been a player like him in the history of football. And you can go, oh, well, what about back... who's that guy? What about back in like the 50s and the 40s, smoking Chuck Bednarik, smoking the heater? It's like, yeah, the sport wasn't integrated back then. It was barely professional. You just can't compare it. It's true. What he was doing, what they were doing back then, the guys that were playing, that was badass. Like, incredible athletes. But you just can't compare the sport, let's say, since the merger, even if we want to be generous. And there's been nothing since the merger of anything like this. And I can't help but think of Shohei a little bit, and people thinking that wouldn't really work the way that they thought it was going to work, and it did. Athletes are getting better in every single sport. They're just the greatest athletes of all time are right now, because that's how it always is. So why couldn't he just be the best at both positions? And who knows? Maybe he can play 80 snaps a game. I'm not saying 120, but maybe he can play 40 on both sides. I don't know.
And that's a value. And it messes up, right? It fundamentally changes everybody's value adds or whatever.
But it means you should take him first overall, doesn't it? Because you just got the best at both spots.
To me,
right?
To me, it makes sense.
Yeah,
does it make sense to them?
I think it does. I think people will be so intrigued. I don't care what the mocks say. From now until then, I'm going to believe that Travis Hunter goes over Abdul Carter. Cam Ward's another thing because he's a quarterback, and I get why quarterbacks just get taken in front of any non-quarterbacks. But I won't believe that the Patriots can get Travis Hunter until it happens, unless they're trading up. Because I just don't believe that teams would pass on this man. And I don't think they would pass on him for Shedeur Sanders either. So I still think he's going like top 2 in this class.
There's precedent, right, on using cap space to acquire draft picks. And if you miss, if you miss, right, on the Godwins of the world, on the Stanleys of the world, and you have some cap space, why not?
Because if you're going to give up an extra draft pick to move up for Travis Hunter, you just got another draft pick by taking him, because you're getting the top cornerback and the top receiver in this class.
It's 2 for 1.
I think it's breaking people's brains. That was one of my questions too. It's like, what do they see him as? I'm going to go, how high do the second level of quarterbacks go? So
too high.
So Shedeur Sanders is fascinating. I don't think he gets out of the top 10 ultimately. We talked about him a little bit with Adam West on Friday's show. I think the next crop of quarterbacks are fascinating. And I think there's consensus around that the top 3 of that group is Jackson Dart, Tyler Shuck, and Jalen Milroe, in whatever order you want to put them. And if you told me someone else pops up higher than any of those, it's not that crazy, because none of these guys are incredible prospects. Dart is in DJ's top 50 and ultimately made his first round mock draft. We've started to see this weird Tyler Shuck Browns connection popping up. Like, I've seen it from a couple places locally, and then DJ said it too. It makes me think there's something going on there where they're going to take Carter, Hunter early, and then like Shuck, they're saying, well, he's a big guy who will fit in the AFC North. It's like, yeah, but he shrinks away from pressure. That you need in the AFC North too. So I don't know, but it's how high do these guys go? Because people talk themselves into the quarterbacks every year, and yet sometimes they really don't get taken very high. It was just a couple of years ago that ultimately the Malik Willis draft class and Desmond Ridder, those guys didn't get taken until the 3rd round. And so that could happen with these guys as well. And yet there's so many teams, Patrick, that need quarterbacks in this class. Let's just quickly go through them. I would categorize these 4 teams as desperate: Browns, Giants, Steelers, Titans. So that's already 4. And we only have 2 higher tier quarterbacks, and then 3 more in this. And then 2 more teams I would throw in there as pretty desperate, and that would be the Saints and the Jets. I don't think the Jets view themselves that way. I think they might just be punting on this class, but I would say they don't have a long-term solution. So I personally would put them in that category.
Yeah, I think the problem is going to be the success of the 2024 class, where you've got all of these guys, and a lot of them going into good situations. Bo Nix being able to play in that Sean Payton offense and play pretty well, get better as the season goes on. Jaden Daniels having arguably the best rookie quarterback season of all time. I mean, still plenty to feel great about Caleb's season in Chicago, despite how much of a chaotic mess it was, right? And so you had all these guys be successful, and JJ gets hurt, so it's kind of a nothing there, right? Where it's every year can't be like that. And so I think, especially when you talk about like Shuck and Dart.
Shuck is a 25-year-old prospect from Louisville who can spin it, who has a lot of pro throws, but also some injury history and seems to really shy his way against pressure. All these guys seem to have a little trouble. They don't seem like 3 great prospects to me, Dart, Milroe, or Shuck. They seem like 3rd or 4th round prospects to me, personally.
And I don't want to put like the sins of Brandon Weeden on Tyler Shuck, right, for being 25 years old. But just in terms of like evaluating the growth of a prospect, because I know there's folks out there that's like, oh well, the Browns can just take Abdul Carter if he's there, and then wait and take Tyler Shuck and not have to worry about Shadur Sanders. I really think there's a significant gap to me,
Yeah.
right, in terms of long-term potential between Shadur Sanders and Tyler Shuck, where I think if it's Shuck, if it's Dart, one of those guys is going to get taken entirely too early. Probably, those out there who believe you can play too early, they're also going to be put in that situation that's not going to be good for them.
He started college, Shuck did, by the way, and we're going to dive in later in this process. We'll go position by position and get really into these guys. But I was just checking to make sure I was right because I had a feeling. He started college the same year as Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence is in his second year of what is already seen as maybe a disappointing contract as a veteran.
That would be the same year as Justin Fields, too. And Fields is on his third team.
That's crazy. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We got a couple big picture questions about the 2025 draft class coming up. Back on NFL Daily, we're asking big questions about a big part of our offseason. This is the first NFL Daily offseason, so we're learning what this pre-draft process is going to be like. It's going to be a lesson for all of us.
Yeah.
We're going to lean on you, Patrick.
Lean on me. I think it's better. Learning is a process that's best achieved collaboratively, and so since we're all doing this together, it's going to be better for all of us.
All right, give me a question then.
Okay. Considering what we just saw in 2024 with Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, if the Raiders don't pick Ashton Jeanty at 6, is it realistic to think the Bears could just stay there and wait what will feel like 6 hours and pick him at 10?
No.
Like somebody's coming up there.
I don't think anyone's coming up. I just think the Raiders are going to take him.
So you think if the Bears want Ashton Jeanty, then they need to be on the phone right now?
I don't think that's going to happen. I just don't think teams like the Bears or any team are going to want to trade up for a running back. As great and as unique a prospect he is. And one of my questions was about the running backs too. So we'll kind of combine these. And mine was, just how do these running backs shake up fantasy? Just to get into the fantasy of it all. Because as I mentioned off the top, outstanding running back class. So Ashton Jeanty, according to Maurice Jones-Drew, is the best running back prospect he has scouted in terms of professionally going through all these guys. I love that he loves Jeanty because Jeanty reminds me a little bit of Maurice Jones-Drew. I mean, just in terms of absolutely fantastic motor, shakes people off, great vision, can get small in a tight space, but can also run you over a little bit. Somewhat similar body type to Maurice. Look, if you got Maurice, that's a top 10 pick.
Yeah.
But there's other guys behind him. Omari and Hampton, some teams, in terms of size, weight, speed, they're going to love him almost as much as Jeanty. Travion Henderson from Ohio State. Quinshon Judkins from Ohio State. Hell, MJD had Scattaboo as his number 3 running back. Love that, by the way. That was bold. Ultimately, I don't think a team is going to trade up. So if you're the Bears and you do want a running back at 10, and I don't know, man, they might have Will Campbell available to them there. I think you're just sitting and waiting and seeing what happens because whether it's offensive line or running back, I don't think they're want to give up draft assets. Ryan Poles is not going to want to do that, I don't think, to get to 6. And maybe the Raiders don't take him. Maybe all that buzz is wrong. But this seems like a buzzy pick, Jeanty to the Raiders.
Yeah, it's just hard to imagine a player as special as Ashton Jeanty going that far down. But we've seen it before. I 6 players into my running back review.
Okay.
I think Omari and Hampton, right? It's going to come down to how you view the way that he was coached at North Carolina, because I know that there was a lot of those dive plays where it seemed like he just wasn't a very imaginative runner, but he was going to get what was blocked. The place where he really shines is that contact balance. But even when you're saying like, oh, he's an A at contact balance, Jeanty's off the charts, right? In all of these metrics where you watch him and then you watch somebody else, and it's just so dissimilar that I think it warrants, if the picks and the value are there and you want the player, which is what, I wanted to think about, like, just in general about this draft.
Yeah.
Why sit there and mess around and be like, oh, well, we've got a third rounder's worth of value in 20. No, like, go get the player, man.
Okay, but the Raiders might not want to give him up. I mean, would he look cool in silver and black?
I would sell.
It's a cool group. Gino, him, Brock. That'd be fun. Be a fun team. They have bigger needs though, so they certainly they could go a different position and he could fall to 10. You're absolutely right, and I do think it's interesting these 5 guys, and then you've got other players that. There's some Dylan Sampson from Tennessee, like true believers out there. I think he's top 3 or 4 in this class. There's DJ Giddens from Kansas State. MJD is a big fan of. Like, it is very deep, and there are a lot of teams that need running backs quickly. Browns, desperate for one. Steelers, Jalen Warren's there, but they need one. Broncos, desperate for one. Raiders don't really have one. I'm not counting Raheem Mostert. Cowboys, I think they downgraded this offseason. They desperately need one. I could see them taking one in the first round. The Bears, you mentioned. And then there's a secondary list where guys will be getting drafted in the 3rd round here from some of these teams. The Chargers, I think, need another back. They can't just go with Najee. The Giants need another back. I think they like what they got last year, but not enough that you're not just going to put the whole thing on your 4th round pick from a year ago. Commanders, maybe they want one of their own guys, the new guys. The Saints, the 49ers, the Chiefs. Like, there's a lot of different running back hungry teams. I'm going to ask a question. How do the Giants, Browns, and Saints front offices specifically think is the best way to save their jobs? Because those are the 3 teams I think that go into the draft with the most pressure on them needing to deliver something now.
With the first 2, it seems obvious the way to save your job is to take the quarterback and have some sort of promise with the quarterback in 2025. If there's not that and they don't go to the playoffs, I don't think either one of those situations is viable in the long term. We've discussed the Loomis situation. I don't know what it actually takes.
I know, but he's standing on the table saying, we need to save our job, and I just think those 3 teams, it'll be interesting. I think they need immediate impact drafts. So to me, it'll be interesting to see what they decide to do. Give me another question here.
Okay, so we've considered that this free agent situation on linemen, like after the most recent signings, like Cam Robinson goes. There's a significant drop off,
right?
And we know like there's a premium at this position, and we've seen like a huge run. Is it not conceivable that we purely just get linemen for like 7 picks in a row in this draft?
Yeah, it's a good call. That I really believe that we're entering a new phase of the NFL where I think the premium on offensive linemen has gone to another level. Whereas, yes, there's always been a premium on them, but now the guards, this is a really good guard class. They're getting pushed up even more. Look at what they're making in free agency. The centers certainly as well. Teams hit on a bunch of rookie centers last year. This is not supposed to be a great rookie center class, but it's a good rookie guard class. And I do think that there's a premium on tackles to the point now where they're getting pushed up like a round.
Yeah.
They're like quarterbacks. And are there good enough players at these positions to really support like those guys getting so high? Because if you go through like the top 100 prospects rankings, like Eric Edholm does a good job of that. There's not a ton of guys near the top. Will Campbell from LSU, Armand Membu from Missouri. They're legit up there, and they're not going to make it out of the top 10. But there's not a lot of tackles that people are excited about in this class. So like how far do you get pushed up? Because you better be right too. Like, yeah, you need to find guards and tackles in the draft, but when you miss on them, like no one feels bad for you. Like Okonwu for the Panthers, they've been waiting for him to turn it around.
Yeah, I just think like with Zabel, with Banks, like some of these
Kelvin Banks from Texas, he's a very divisive prospect. Yes,
yeah, like the spots where we're projecting teams to come up and reach to these quarterbacks. There's going to be an offensive lineman where a team is looking at their cap structure, Stratford, like they are going to want to have these years of control for these linemen. Where it's like, why am I going to swing at this quarterback that's I don't know, versus taking this guy where he makes the numbers work out for me long term if I think I'm going to have my job long term.
Yeah, it's where a guy like Josh Simmons, who's coming off of a really serious injury, maybe he gets taken in the middle to the late first round. He was from Ohio State. Kind of reminds me of Paris Campbell. Actually, now that I think of it, and he's got his former offensive line coach in Arizona. Maybe he's an option for them in the middle of the first round, where you start taking bigger swings. Gray Zabel, you mentioned, who can play center, play guard, play tackle. Probably is going to play center. Josh Connerly, the Oregon tackle. Like, these guys are going to get pushed up. Speaking of pushed up, my last question here is just how high do the top of the tight ends go? Because, like I said, it's a great class. You're not going to be able to find Brock Bowers every year, but coming off a couple of classes now where the tight ends came in and made pretty big impacts, where coaches are being creative in what they're asking their tight ends, maybe not asking them to just be in there inline blocking, but figuring out the plays where they actually can block and not kill you, like a Sam Laporta. When he didn't necessarily show that in college, or some other players like that. Obviously, Brock Bowers is kind of like a big wide receiver and is great at it. How high do they go? Now, in the first round, especially, that's Tyler Warren and that's Colston Loveland. Could they go, both of them, or one of them, ahead of any wide receiver in this class? Like that's sort of where we're talking about them.
Yeah, any non-Travis Hunter wide
right,
receiver.
I'm not counting Travis Hunter. That's a fair point. Any just like only wide receiver.
Yeah, I think they could. I don't necessarily see them, because even though I'm pretty sure Brock Bowers' rookie season wasn't a surprise to anybody. Like, anybody that saw him play at Georgia and evaluated him, it's like, okay, Brock Bowers did Brock Bowers things. Then we go back to the Kyle Pitts draft, where that hasn't necessarily been successful. But like even those guys, right, didn't go ultimately that high.
Yeah.
And so, like, now that we're like,
Bowers fell to what, 13?
Yeah. So with like Loveland, right, I just, it's tough to imagine the value to the position going up more, even if you say that this draft isn't as talent heavy as previous years.
That's the thing. The guys getting taken, someone's got to go between 5 and 15. And I don't think those guys would have gone between 5 and 15 the last few years. And it might be Tyler Warren. Tyler Warren is a fascinating and weird evaluation. I think some teams will wonder how much he translates, but also he's just a total beast with the ball in his hands from Penn State, just dominating games, and someone's going to fall in love with that guy.
Yeah. And so, like, Kyle Pitts ultimately did go before Jamar Chase, but the quarterbacks probably pushed Brock Bowers down, you know.
Wait, Kyle Pitts went ahead of Jamar Chase? Is that right?
I think so, right?
I thought he went...
And like, it wasn't it 4?
Oh, that's right.
That was 20.
I don't know
21?
why my brain has thought that he went like 8 in that class.
No.
I was trying to be generous. That's where Drake London went to the Falcons. That's what I was thinking of.
And so
that's kind of rough.
Yeah.
I feel bad for Pitts, just that he went ahead of Jamar Chase.
There's still a chance. And who knows what Falcons Jamar Chase's career would have been like.
He would have been
probably
it would have been fine.
Would have been spectacular.
Drake London has still shown that he's Drake London, and as great as Drake London is, he's not quite Jamar Chase.
Yeah, the whole, you know, it's hard not to look at the draft as like the individual constituents, but you have to look at the whole thing. And I know folks are like, well, hey, you can get Bucky Irving in the 4th round. If you knew he was Bucky Irving, then he wouldn't be lasting to the 4th.
Right, and that's why these tight ends I think are going to go pretty early, potentially both in the top 20. Maybe Tyler Ward, maybe either one could go in the top 10. Nothing would be, I think, a shock here. And then there's Elijah Arroyo from Miami. There's Mason Taylor from LSU. These are guys with transferable NFL skills. We've seen that these guys don't really make it out of the top 50, 55. And so I think the question for a lot of these teams, and this is more the big picture thought, is like, do you take the tight end or do you take the receiver prospect? So there's 4 really solid ones, great ones at the top, but also some good maybe second round options. Do you have one more question?
I've emptied the clip.
I appreciate the honesty. We're just getting warmed up this week. I'm excited. Got some of your favorites on the show joining us. We got Shook. We got Colleen and Jordan later in the week. Look, when it's time, when we're finally starting to cram for the NFL draft, Patrick, like free agency, it's over. Football's back.